Okay, Sudarshan, let's get started. Yeah.
Yeah, please start.
Okay. Yeah. Badram Karanebihi Shrunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Yajatraha Sthirairangair Tushtuam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Swastinah Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinah Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinah Tarksho Arishtaremihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रक्षुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वदाम्नान्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाबोधं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So, good evening, everyone. So, we are starting a new series from today. I have given the title Mandukya Upanishad, philosophy of Om and consciousness. So, the hope here is that it will be interesting and it'll initiate interactive discussions, and more importantly, it'll give you a glimpse into the profound philosophy of Hinduism, the profound philosophy of the Vedas, Vedantas, and the Upanishads. And I'm pretty sure that Mandukya Upanishad will be a fantastic Upanishad to start, so that I hope I'll be able to inspire you to go and explore more Upanishads. There are so many Upanishads out there. And let's start with Mandukya Upanishad, which is one of the smaller, shorter versions of Upanishads. Yeah. So, philosophy of Om and consciousness. So, before we kind of home into Mandukya Upanishad, it's always a good practice to try and understand where is Mandukya Upanishad placed in the grand scheme of things, and in which shaka of Veda it comes, and so on. Okay. So, let me get this slide to move. Yes. So, Vedas, they form the foundation of Sanatana Dharma. Yeah. That is the core text for us for any type of philosophizing that we would want to do. So, Veda as a body of text is one, and traditionally it is viewed as infinite. Now, as you're probably aware, we have done this during Brahmasutras. At the end of Dwapara Yuga, much of the Vedas was lost, or much of the Vedas were not being interpreted in the spirit in which they were available to us. So there are lots of wrong interpretations, lots of more ritualistic view of the Vedas, lots of other quite unacceptable practices that were being referred to the Vedas and so on. So those were the problems around the end of the Dwapara Yuga. So at that point, as we all know, Vedavyasa incarnates, and then he kind of conserves the Vedas, whatever Veda that was available at the end of the Dwapara Yuga. He brings them all together, and then he systematically categorizes them to various shake or branches, and he gives it to his disciples, and from his disciples other families and traditions come around, and there are various upashakes or sub branches that evolve from this, and different families preserving particular portions of the Vedas. And that is how the Vedas have been preserved over thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. And as you know, this is the oldest text of mankind. But what is remarkable about Vedas is the sequences of the Vedas remain essentially the same. If you can recall from what we did last week, we said Vedas are also called Amnaya. Amnaya means they have always the eternal sequence of the eternal Varnas that is there in the mind of the Supreme comes out in each creation, and that eternal sequence is eternal. And what our rishis and our Hindu tradition has done is it has maintained that eternal sequence by word of mouth and hearing. So that is why, as you know, it is called Shruti. So that sequences and the words in the Vedas have been preserved down the generations through various families. So when you look at Vedas, Veda Vyasa, for example, had four students: Paila, Vaishampayana, Jaimini, and Sumantu. So what he did was he gave Rigveda to Paila and asked him look after it, and he gave Yajurveda to Vaishampayana and said look after it. Sama to Jaimini and Atharva to Sumantu Rishi. to kind of protect it and preserve it. Okay, so these becomes the four shake or branches of the Vedas. So when I say Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda, I don't mean that they are different types of Vedas. They are just a branch within this big body of text called the Vedas. Okay. Now Rig Veda, for example, it gets down preserved by 24 different shakes or families. So that is for Rig Veda 24. Now Yajur Veda, as you know, is slightly interesting. There are two chaps who come down below Vaishampayana. So you have the Vaishampayana, then you have the Yajnavalkya, the famous rishi and philosopher of the Upanishads. So they both preserve a portion of the Yajur Veda, and there is a history and a story behind it. You can read about it, or maybe we can discuss it for some other day. So Vaishampayana and the family that comes below him, they preserve 86 branches of the Yajur Veda. And Yajnavalkya and people who come below him, they preserve 15 portions of the Yajur Veda. So together it is 101. Okay. Samaveda is a large body of material, and there are 1,000 upashakes. There are 1,000 branches that were established near at the end of Dwapara Yuga, early Kali Yuga, if you like. And Atharva Veda had 12 branches, 12 upashakes. So if you add all these upashakes, 24 plus 86 plus 15 plus 1,000 plus 12, it comes to 1137. Okay, and I've always told you that numerology, numbers, Sankhya in Vedic philosophy is quite interesting, because if you take 1137, it is a prime number and it is divisible by 3. Okay, 3 is the only number by which 1137 is divisible. And why is 3? Because Vedas, the whole Vedas, there are only three types of Vedas: Padya, Gadya, and Gana. Yeah. So the original Veda are only three types. Yeah. Padya, Gadya, and Gana. Padya means poetry in meters. Gadya means prose, and Gana means music. Yeah. So Rig Veda is primarily composed of poetry, meters, verses. Yajur Veda predominantly in prose. Sama Veda is Gana. Okay. Atharva Veda, you could say, so what is Atharva Veda? Atharva Veda is a combination of all this. Okay. Combination of prose and poetry. So that is why 1137 divided can be divided only by 3. Okay, so that is how it was in that time. So down the generations, of course, much of these Vedas have been lost. Yeah, currently we have only three Upashakes that are there in Bharatvarsha for Rig Veda. In Yajur, there are about 3 to 6, both in South and North India. In various places, there are certain families that are still there preserving this. Samaveda, look at this, from 1,000, we are down to 3. And Atharva Veda, from 12, we are down to 2. So each Veda has got so many verses. So if you put all these verses together, it's about 20,416 verses that are available in the Vedas for you to read. You know, you could buy the whole volume of Vedas. They're available. Yeah, a few months ago, I purchased a complete set of all the Vedas in Sanskrit. It came from India. You can order this. So these books are available for you to read, and you don't even have to read, just have it in your library and look at it every day, then you'll get inspired. Yeah, so those are all now available in books in Sanskrit and in English. Yeah, so that is a big volume of text, as you know. And then these big volumes of text have been traditionally divided into four portions: the Samhita portion, the Brahmana portion, Aranyaka portions, and the Upanishads. Okay, now for the purpose of our discussion over the next several weeks, we are going to focus only on the Upanishads. Yeah. So Samhita are the core portions of the Vedas. Brahmana, so Brahma, for example, means Vedas. Yeah. We have discussed various meanings of Brahmas. So when I say Brahmana, it means Brahma means Veda. So this is further elaboration of the Samhita portion is called Brahmana. Now, why are there other portions called Aranyaka? Aranyaka, as you know, is forest. Yeah. So these are the texts that people who have finished their Grihastha ashrama, going to Vanaprastha, they go to the forest and then they read the Vedas, that portions of the Vedas. So they are called the Aranyakas. And Upanishads, you could call, there is the essence of all the three. Okay, so we will deal with that in the next slide. So I just have a question for all of us, just to open up discussions for today, is what is the meaning of the word Upanishads? We have done this about 10, 11, I think 11 or 11 months or 12 months ago, even more than that, to discuss what does the word Upanishad actually mean. So can I just open this up for discussion, please? And can I have some volunteers to contribute here? Any volunteers, please?
Yeah, Upanishads, are they the meaning of the Vedas or the essence of the Vedas?
Yeah, thank you, Sudarshan. Yeah, so that's one interpretation, one meaning of Upanishads. Yeah. Anybody else?
Upa means above. So it's higher. You sit next to somebody, but above.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Deval. That's also good. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, very similar to Deval. I'd heard that it is being close to someone, close to the truth, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Anybody else? Lots of
Uh,
answers coming through.
I think I have an interpretation as well. I've heard of it. This is basically, I think, sitting next to like the guru or someone, and so this is more of a verbal tradition where you sit next to them and listen to them. I think that's what Upanishad means.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So you all got the one meaning of the Upanishads. There are several meanings for Upanishads. So you got, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So my mom was saying that which that elevates us. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, excellent. So we've all got various interpretations of Upanishads. Now, starting from the word Upanishad itself. Now, as we have discussed several times before, every word in the Vedas, every word in our scriptures is all etymological. Nothing is Rudyartha. Everything is Yaugika. Yaugika means when there is a word, you have to split it open, and then that gives you a meaning. Yeah. So that is literally how you have to approach Upanishads as well. So one etymological meaning of Upanishad is Upanisannam Brahma Tattvam Atreti Upanishad. That means that body of text in which is present Brahman. So what does that mean? Upani Sannam Brahma Tattvam. Yeah, that means in that body of text, you can see Brahman, you can know about Brahman, you can know about God. That is the Paravidya. Yeah, so that is one meaning of Upanishads. Now, Shankaracharya gives an interpretation, a very interesting interpretation of Upanishad, which I put it on the left. He says, Upa plus Nishadayati iti Upanishad. So Nishadayati means that which is destroyed. Okay. So what is destroyed when you read this book? Your ignorance is destroyed when you read these books and then you gain the knowledge. Or when you gain the knowledge, your samsara eventually is destroyed and you reach liberation or you go to a state of liberation. So Nishadayati, as Sankaracharya describes it, is either the destruction of ignorance or destruction of samsara. Okay, so that body of text that actually takes us towards that is Upanishad. Okay, now comes the next interpretation. I think it was Deval and I think Manjunath. They were mentioning about Upanishadana. Okay, Nishadana means sitting close. Yeah, so Nishadana means to sit. Upa means to sit close. To sit close to whom? To sit close to a guru and learn the scriptures. So that is Upanishadana. Now, the word, the prefix upa here can mean two things. It can mean upari or upara. Yeah, so upari and upara becomes upa. Okay, so what does that upari and upara means is upari means that which is elevated or that which is high above. Yeah, the English word, for example, up comes from upa or upari. It's direct derivation from Sanskrit word. So the letter up or upper comes from upari. The German word ober, which also means above, also comes from upari or upa. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of high. So there are two concepts here. One is you sit close to a guru. Yeah, that is one meaning. The other meaning, as my mom was mentioning, was upari. That is, as you read this text, as you elevate yourself, what happens? As you elevate yourself, you go closer to God. Yeah. So that also gives you an idea of what Upanishad is. Now, there is another word, there is another meaning called upahvara. Upahvara means very secretive. Yeah, it's a very esoteric and a very secretive body of text. So, what that means essentially is, and recently we had some discussions around this, what does a secretive text actually means? It does not mean that this text is not available for access to anybody else but from an exclusive few. That is not the meaning of secretive text. A secretive text means this book is available only for those who have the aptitude to read this, or who have a motivation to read this, or who have the capacity to read this, or who have an inspiration to read this, or who essentially have an inner desire to elevate themselves. So it is available only for those people. This is not something you will open up in a pub and read. Yeah, this is serious contemplation about existential things. So it is a very secretive and esoteric text. So it is called Upahvara. So upa plus ni plus shad basically combines all these various concepts. Okay. If you go to Mahabharata, there is a definition itself as to what a Upanishad actually means. There is a verse called Yam Vakeshu, Anuvakeshu, Nishatsu, Upanishadsu, Cha Vadanti, Satya Karmanam, Satyam Satyeshu Samasu. Okay, there is this discussion that happens in Mahabharata, where the Vedic scriptures have been divided into Anuvakas, Vakas, music, Nishad, and Upanishad. So Anuvaka means Rigved, mantras. Vakas are the prose of Yajurveda. The music is of the Samaveda. Nishad means Brahmanas and Aranyakas. And Upanishads means after that is the Upanishad. So that actually gives you a classification of how the Vedic texts are set up. So just a slide for you to think about what actually is Upanishad, because we need to know exactly what is the purpose of the Upanishad. So the purpose of the Upanishad, to conclude this slide, is that we sit close to a guru, or we sit close to a book, and we read, and in the process we elevate ourselves, and when we elevate ourselves we go close to the Supreme. Yeah, so that is in essence is the meaning of the word Upanishads. Okay, now there are so many Upanishads. Yeah. So now if you think about Vedas are infinite, so by that definition, Upanishads must also be infinite. Okay. Now we cannot read infinite Upanishads, let alone reading one or two Upanishads. There are about 108 popular Upanishads that are available in Vedic literature. Yeah. But among those 108, there are 10 very important Upanishads that are called as Dasha Upanishad. Dasha means, as you know, is 10. So Dasha Upanishad. So look at how our rishis make things easy for us. They have not said read all the infinite Upanishads. They have not said read 108 Upanishads. They're telling us, please read at least 10 Upanishads in your life to elevate yourself. So now I want to put a bit of symbolism here. So this is something that you would have seen of Krishna riding a chariot in Mahabharata war. There are 4 white horses that he is riding on, and there are lots of symbolism around it. Now these horses were given, if you read Mahabharata, these horses were given to Arjuna by Agni. Yeah, and they have a specific name: Saibya, Sugriva, Meghapushpa, and Balahaka. So those are the names of those 4 horses that Agni Deva actually gives it to Arjuna. This is well before the Mahabharata war. But actually there is an inner meaning of why 4 horses. He could have given 2 horses, 5 horses. The 4 horses there actually represent the 4 main branches of the Vedas: the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharvana Veda. So this symbolism directly tells you the Vedas are directly under the control of the Supreme. He is holding them with his reign. They are directly under the control of the Supreme, and they are under the control of the Supreme. Okay, so I hope you're able to appreciate that symbolism when you see, in all these pictures of Mahabharata battle, as to why there are 4 horses. Okay, now within those branches there are Upanishads, yeah, as we discussed before. So where do all these 10 Upanishads actually fall into? So you got the Rig Veda, which has got the Aitareya Upanishad. It is one of the key Upanishads of the Rig Veda. It is a very big Upanishad, and this is extremely esoteric. The words of Aitareya of Rig Veda, or some of the Sanskrit words, are it is Vedic Sanskrit, nothing to do with modern day Sanskrit. So you do need to sit down with an acharya, a guru, and read very carefully the Aitareya Upanishad. It's a very very interesting, very beautiful Upanishads. Then you have Yajurveda. So Yajurveda, as you know, has got two. You have Shukla Yajurveda and you have Krishna Yajurveda. So for our contemplation in Shukla Yajurveda, there are two Upanishads. Isha Upanishad and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Now, Isha Upanishad is a beautiful Upanishad. It's got only 18 mantras. Yeah, and remember our famous number 18. Isha Upanishad has got 18 mantras. Okay, whereas the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is the complete opposite. It is the largest Upanishad among all the Upanishad. That is why it is called Brihad. Yeah, Brihad, as you know, means big. Brihad comes from the root word brih. So brih means big, big. So among all the Upanishads, it is the biggest Upanishad, and it is traditionally those days used to be studied in the forest, Aranyaka. Yeah? So Brihad Aranyaka is a huge Upanishad. Then in Krishna Yajurveda, you have Katha Upanishad and Taittiriya Upanishad. Yeah, all both moderate size but profound enough. Then you go to Samaveda, you got two Upanishads, Chandogya and Kena. Kena Upanishad is also called Talavakara Upanishad. It's a smaller Upanishad compared to the two, and Chandogya is the larger Upanishad in the Samaveda. Okay, so if you look at Yajurveda and Samaveda, you have Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which you would have heard about it quite a lot. So that comes in Shukla Yajurveda, and in Samaveda you have the Chandogya Upanishad, which is also big. Okay, then you have Atharva Veda. So Atharva Veda Upanishads, there are three Upanishads at our disposal. You have Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, and Prashna Upanishad. So these are the three Upanishads that are available for us to study, certainly during this lifetime. They are small Upanishads. Yeah. So there are 10 Upanishads here. Now, outside the 10, there are few other Upanishads that are frequently cited by Acharyas. When I say Acharyas, I mean Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya. Okay, so they cite Upanishads from these 10 Upanishads, but they also cite other two Upanishads, such as you have Shvetashvatara Upanishad, you have Kaushatika Upanishad, then there are Atma Bindu Upanishad. There are so many other Upanishads that are also cited by Acharyas. Now, the Dasha Upanishad becomes important because Shankaracharya, on the one hand, gives Bhashyas for all the 10 Upanishads. Then you have Madhvacharya on the other hand, he also gives Bhashyas for all the 10 Upanishads. Ramanujacharya primarily has not done a Upanishad Bhashya, but in his various works, like Sri Bhashya, of his Brahmasutra Bhashya, for example, he very profusely cites the Upanishads. So there are various Upanishads commentaries that are included within the Sutra Bhashya of Ramanujacharya. But following that, one of the disciples of Ramanujacharya, called Ranga Ramanujacharya, has actually done commentaries on all the 10 Upanishads. So those of you who are interested in this can go and explore various acharyas and their works. It's comparative studies is really interesting, and it's a fertile ground for philosophizing key concepts that come out in the Upanishads. Yeah. Now the question here is, why Dasha Upanishad that has been taken here is that is traditionally the concept of Dasha Upanishad comes from Shankaracharya's time, where he took these 10 Upanishads and found evidences for his hypothesis or for his view of Vedanta. Yeah, and following that, it has become a tradition that these 10 Upanishads are usually taken up as key texts for our studies. And remember, Upanishads form one of the three Prasthanatrayas. So I'm going to pause there and ask who is going to answer what are the three Prasthanatrayas.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Yeah,
Go, Anita.
Bhagavad Gita, Brahmasutra, and Upanishads.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So those are the three Prasthanatrayas. So these 10 Upanishads form part of the Prasthanatrayas. Then you have the Sutra Prasthana, which is the interpretation of these 10 Upanishads and the Vedas. Yeah. So that is the Sutra Prasthana. And then in the middle, you have the Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of the Upanishads. You can call Bhagavad Gita itself as a Gita Upanishad, but in principle, Bhagavad Gita is the summary of all the 10 Upanishads and the Vedas. When I say Upanishads, it's not different from Vedas. Vedas and Upanishads are the same. They form the same body of texts. Yeah. Now, that is the whole scope of the Dasha Upanishad. And now, when we are looking at this, look at the Gita itself says, and we have done this Vedaishta Sarvair Ahameva Vedyaha. So, the whole of the Vedas, including the Upanishads, Krishna has already said, they talk only about me. Okay. So, if for example, we have an artificial distinction of this is karma kanda, this is jnana kanda, this talks about sacrifice, this talks about knowledge. It is only our problem because we have not understood how to interpret that particular portion of the Vedas. Because Krishna has categorically said, Vedaishta sarve ahame vedya. The whole of the Vedas only talk about me. Only he has said this categorically. But somehow, over the last several hundred to thousand years, we have had this artificial differentiation of karma kanda, jnana kanda, and all that. That is for another day. But I just wanted to impress upon you that every word of the Upanishads and the Vedas talk only about the Supreme. Katha Upanishad also says the same thing. Sarve Vedaha yat padam amananti. That's what Yama is telling Nachiketa. Every portion of the Veda, every word of the Veda is only talking about the Supreme. So that is a key point I want you to remember when we make progress reading this Mandukya Upanishad or any other Upanishad, because we need to see, okay, in the superficial sense, what does this Upanishad mean? But actually, when I look at where Krishna has said everything is talking about me, so that is called Parama Mukhya Vritti. So when you do that, then how does that particular word in the Upanishad actually denote the Supreme Being? So that is how you need to contemplate the Upanishads as you go through these kind of discussions on mantras. And I'll illustrate that with various words as we pick up. Okay, now let's go to the overall structure of Mandukya Upanishad. Okay, so Mandukya Upanishad is a small Upanishad, as I told you. The core verses are 12. Yeah, so you will be amazed. There are only 12, 2 core verses. Yeah, but still each word, each letter in those mantras and prose texts are amazing. Yeah, they are divided into 4 khandas or 4 parts. Pratamaha, Dvitiyaha, Tritiya, Chaturtha. Okay, and in each khanda there is the prose bit of it, and there are also some verses. Okay, so this is interesting because, as you know, Mandukya Upanishad, yeah, is part of the Atharva Veda. And when I told you about Atharva Veda, I told you it is a combination of prose and poetry. Yeah, so see, there is a classic example of that in this particular portion of Atharva Veda. You have prose and you have poetry. Okay, so Gadya and Padya. Okay, so there are combinations of this, and for the purists who want to study this very seriously, the prose bit is easy, whereas the Padya, the poetry bit or the mantra bit, the mantra portions of the Mandukya Upanishad, they're called Brahmadrashtra mantras. Okay, so these are all the so this is the classic rendering of this as per the various acharyas of the realistic schools, where there are some mantras within Mandukya Upanishad. They're called Brahmadrashtra mantras. Brahmadrashtra mantra means these are all the mantras that Chaturmukha Brahma has seen and he has recited that. Okay, that is Brahmadrashtra mantras. If you go to the Advaita school of Upanishad interpretation, they have a particular portion within the Mandukya Upanishad called Gaudapada Karikas. Okay, and what the Advaita school has done is they have incorporated Brahmadrashtra mantras into the Gaudapada Karika. Okay, so I'm just giving this as an interesting piece of information, but you can explore what is the difference and how do the different schools, debate and argue about this. That is not our purpose for our forum, but I just want you to remember. So there is prose, poetry, Brahmadrashtra, Gaudapada Karika. Okay. Now, the other thing before you go to any Upanishad is you need to know who is the Rishi, who is the Devata, what is the Chandas. Okay. So the Rishi for this is Varuna Deva in the Manduka form. Manduka is a frog. Yeah. So the Rishi is Varuna in Manduka form. Go and do some research. That itself is an interesting topic for discussion. Who is the Devata? Who is the supreme being who is being discussed here? Are the Vishwa, Tejasa, Prajna, and Turya form of the supreme are the Devatas here. Now, what is the Chandas? So remember, Chandas primarily comes only in Rig Veda because that is all meters set in poetry. Whereas in Atharvana Veda, Mandukya Upanishad, as I said, is a combination of both. So Brahmadrashtra mantras are all set in Anushtup Chandas. So let's break there for a minute. How many letters are there, syllables are there in Anushtup Chandas? Who is going to answer that, please?
32.
Very good, excellent. So Bhagavad Gita, as you also know, is 32. So Anushtup Chandas is the primary Chandas for all the Brahmadrashtra mantras. Okay, so we move to the next slide. So now we make our pravesha into the very first mantra of Mandukya Upanishad, which actually opens up the discussion for the next 3 to 4 weeks. If you remember, I initially told you, let's do Om and Gayatri, go Om, Vyahriti, Gayatri, and then go to Mandukya Upanishad. I think without giving you an introduction of Mandukya Upanishad and taking up the very first word, that very first words that come in Mandukya Upanishad, you cannot actually jump into the discussion on Om or Pranava or Vyahriti or Gayatri. So how does this Upanishad start? The very first mantra itself is beautiful. All Upanishads, you always say Harihi Om. Yeah, say Harihi Om. Om iti etad akshara. I'll put the arrows there. Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam tasya upavyakyanam bhuta bhavat bhavishyad iti sarvam omkara eva yachanya traikalaatitam tadapi omkara eva sarvam hi etad brahma ayam atma brahma so ayam atma chatushpat. Yeah, so that is the first two mantras. And believe me, they appear to be very simple mantras. Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam tasya upavyakyanam. But actually, when you start looking at this, our acharyas and all the tikas and all the other people who have come down the generations have written so many commentaries on this, and they have written volumes and volumes of taking up these every word and dissecting it out, and hopefully we will do similar kind of analysis. So when you look at the very first word of Mandukya Upanishad, it says Om. Okay, that is the very first word of Mandukya Upanishad. Om iti etad aksharam. Okay, so there is this word called etad. So etad, we have done this etad many times. Words like etad, eshaha, ayam, asau, all these various words that come in our scriptures, they need to be watched very carefully. Even in the Gita, when we were doing this, we were discussing about this apicha, api eva. So etad, even that also comes, that word also comes in Gita in various situations. So we need to first understand what that etad actually means here before we make pravesha to the rest of the first three words. So etad means something that is very close to you. That is literally etad means. Remember, this is Varuna contemplating on the supreme, and he is reciting these verses as revealed to him. So this Varuna in the sage who is in deep contemplation will not be looking at the external world. In this situation, he is actually contemplating and he is gone inwards and he is looking within himself, and then he is saying this mantra. That is a very, very important point for us to remember. So when you look at that, then that etad becomes important. So etad means that which is very close to me. Okay, so that is what it's saying. Om iti etad aksharam. Okay, so that person who is very close to me, he is called Om and he is also called Aksharam. Okay, that is how it is starting. Now, this will also be very relevant for those of us who have spent 3 months talking about chapter 15. Because what was chapter 15 all about? It was all about Akshara, Kshara, Purushottama, and so on. Now it will make sense for you when I say Om iti etad Aksharam. Okay, so Om is the very first word in Mandukya Upanishad. So now we need to understand what is that Om and why is it important in Sanatana Dharma? What is the philosophical, epistemological, ontological position of Om in Vedic literature and in Sanatana Dharma? Okay. Now the reason why that is important is the same Mandukya Upanishad, the very last verse of the Mandukya Upanishad is, it says, Omkaro vidito yena Samunir ne itaro janaha. So, who is a Muni? Yeah, Muni, it gives a definition. Who is a Muni? Muni means Manana Shilaha. And I put the etymology there. So, Muni he means Manana Shilaha. He who has thought and contemplated very deeply and who has now got an understanding of the Supreme. He is a Muni. Yeah, and the Mandukya Upanishad basically declares he who knows the full meanings and understanding of Omkara is the real Muni or a sage or a Rishi. Okay? It gives a definition. Omkaro vidito yena sa munir na itaro janaha. Others are not. Only the chap who knows everything about Muni of Omkara is the Muni. So what do we want to be? We want to reach that state. We want to be a Muni. We need to know everything about Omkara. So if you want to know about the Omkara, join us for the next 3 to 4 weeks because we have an interesting combination of various bits that we will be discussing about Omkara in Mandukya Upanishad. Now, this Omkara is not only important in Mandukya Upanishad. Look at Chandogya of Samaveda. Look at the very first verse of Chandogya. What does it say? Very similar to Mandukya. It says, Om iti etad aksharam udgitam upasita. So that is also saying the same thing. Om iti etad aksharam udgitam upasita is the very first verse of Chandogya Upanishad. Now look at Katha Upanishad when our Yama is teaching Nachiketa. We've just done this 2 minutes ago. Sarve Vedaha yat padamamananti tapamsi sarvani cha yadvadanti yat icchanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena bravimi om iti etat. Okay. So these brahmacharyam. So people who want to go to that supreme abode, they do brahmacharya and they do studies. What do they study about? They study scriptures and eventually realize that it is that Om, that supreme being is Om. Okay. Bravimi, Om iti etad. So that is also is the message of Katha Upanishad. Look at Taittiriya Upanishad. It actually goes on and gives you a definition. Om iti Brahma, Om iti idang sarvam, Om iti etad anukrit, and it goes on. Yeah, Om iti samani, and it beautifully talks about the various definitions and what do the word Om actually signify. So Om iti Brahma, remember that. So you got two verses in Gita, for example, 7:8 and 10:21. Can I request one of the friends in the audience to recite 7:8 and 10:25 for us, please?
Okay. Hello, Madhu?
Yeah, Nita, go on. Yes, thank you.
Okay. रसोऽहमप्स्यु कौन्तेय प्रभास्मि शशिसूर्ययोः प्रणवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दखे पौरुषं नृषु महर्षीणां भृगुरहं गिरामस्म्येकमक्षरम् यज्ञानां जपयज्ञोऽस्मि स्थावराणां हिमालयः.
Very nice. Thank you, Neetaji. So look at that. Even Gita talks about pranavaha. It talks about aksharam. Yeah. So in Gita, there are a lot of places. I haven't picked all the verses. We got maybe another verse coming up later. So that also talks about Om. Now look at our most famous Gayatri mantra. Yeah. Can I request somebody else to recite the Gayatri mantra, please? Shushrut, are you there?
Yeah,
Or anybody recite the Gayatri mantra, please. It will be really good for one or two folks to recite the Gayatri mantra.
I'll do it once, okay?
Yeah.
Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo nah prachodayat.
Thank you, Sushruti. Anybody else wants to volunteer and recite the Gayatri mantra?
Yes. Can I do that? Can I do that, Madhusudan Bhai?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please. And then we have another person also. Please go.
Om Bhur Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat.
Thank you very much. And
Bhurvaswaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Vargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat.
thank you very much. So look at this Gayatri mantra also starts with Om. So when you look at the Upanishads, when you look at Gita, when you look at the Rig Veda Gayatri mantras, of course we'll deal Gayatri mantra later. But what I wanted to impress upon here is everything seems to start with Om. Om is all pervasive in Indian scriptures, in Hindu scriptures. Om is all pervasive. Not a single work starts without Om. So it is so important. The question is why? Yeah. So I want to take you to Rig Bhashya, the Rig Veda. So the very first Sukta, Agni Shukta. So before the Agni Shukta's Bhashya commences, Acharya gives us an indication as to why Om is important. And this introductory verse is very beautiful from Acharya, and I think it's well worth reciting it. It goes like this. It says, Om Ashesha Guno iti Narayano Apyaso Purno Bhutivaro Ananta Sukho Yad Vyahriti Riritaha Gunais Tataha Prasavita Varaniyo Gunonnatehe Bharati Jnana Rupatvat Bhargo Dhyeyo Akilair Janaihi Prerako Asesha Buddhinam Sagayatri Artha Iritaha सपूर्णत्वात् पूमानाम पौरुषे शुक्त ईरितः स एव अखिल वेदार्थः सर्वशास्त्रार्थ एव च स एव सर्वशब्दार्थ इत्याहो उपनिषत्परा तावा एतारचा इति विशेष ऋक् artanam, and then he goes on. So this first few lines is pretty important. It tells you about what is this about this Om, what is the big deal about this Om. And the Acharya will say, Om Asesha Gunodara iti Narayano Apyasom. And he says, Om is synonymous with Narayana. Om is the name of the Supreme Being. Om is the name of Narayana. And he goes on and explains this. Now, for want of time, we can't go into individual verses, but we will pick it up as we do Gayatri, for example. So, Om, I'm just giving you a rapid review of this. Om it can be seen as a single word, or it can have three components, A, U, and M, what we call as Pranava. That can indicate the Bhu Bhuva Swaha of Gayatri. Now, the first pada of the Bhu Bhuva Swaha of Vyahriti, the first pada of Gayatri corresponds to A, the second pada of Gayatri corresponds to U, the third pada of Gayatri corresponds to M. Now, Varga 1, Varga 2, and Varga 3 of Purusha Shukta, which we have done, corresponds to A, U, and M. The Padya, Gadya, Gana portions of the Vedas that we have discussed just now all corresponds to A, U, and M. And then the Acharya will say, it is not only Padya, Gadya, Gana, but every sound that is there in the universe. Okay, let us not forget that the Sanskrit literature has got only 51 alphabets, Akara and Kshakara, and everything, all the alphabets in between of various combinations becomes the sacred literature. Acharya will ask the question, is human language or any form of communication has only 51 letters? There may be other higher living beings in other planetary systems which may be using entirely different types of sounds. Yeah, even those sounds, all sounds in the universe, they all celebrate the Supreme. Yeah, so that is a profound statement of the Acharya that we need to think about very carefully. But it starts with Om. It starts with Om. Look at the 17th chapter, 23 of Gita. Yeah, so can I get somebody to recite that particular verse, please? 1723 is also beautiful, that it says Krishna is telling this in 1723. So can I have a volunteer to recite that, please?
Shall I read, Madhuji?
Please, Sheilaji, yes.
O Tatsat iti nirtesho Brahmanastrividha smrita Brahmanastena Vedascha Yajñascha Vihita Pura.
Yeah, so thank you, Shilaji. So there in Gita in 1723, Krishna says, Om Tat Sat iti nirdeshaha. And he says, you know what? I am known as Om. I am known, my other name is Tat. My other name is Sat. And he goes on and explains this. Krishna himself declaring that he is called by all these words. Om Tat Sat, as you know, is popularly the name of the Supreme. So this Om is become so important because it actually expands into the whole volume of Vedic literature that we have at our disposal at this point of time. So what is this so big deal about Om then? What does it mean? What is the etymology of Om? Why is it a central concept in Vedic philosophy? What is the science of Om? What on earth is actually is it? Yeah. So those are all some of the key points that I think we need to understand, because when Mandukya Upanishad starts with Om, Varuna is saying Om iti etad aksharam. He is asking us to think about Om very carefully. Why is it is called as Aksharam? Why is it that it is an Akshara? Yeah. And he wants us to think about all these things. What does it mean? Why is central to Vedic philosophy? What is the science of Om? What is it? What is the etymology of Om? Yeah. Now, before we go into, at least let's touch one aspect of it today, and we'll continue this in subsequent weeks. But before we do that, can I get some flavor from friends who are here as to what is their view and what is their understanding of what Om actually means? Yeah. So can we have volunteers? Please go whenever you're ready. So my mom has said Om means God. Om is synonymous is God. That is what it means, is what my mom has said. I agree with you. So anybody else, please, what is their view? What have they
Yes,
studied
I
so
also
far about
second
Om?
your mom, because it's Om is the name of the God. That's what I have heard.
Yeah. Thank you, Shilaji. Anybody else?
Although Suresh,
Yeah.
Om perhaps means everything, anything. I mean, there's hardly anything that Om doesn't mean.
Give me an example.
Like, just, I mean, you could interpret it in terms of relative time. You could interpret it in terms of absolute time. You could interpret it in terms of creation. You could interpret it in terms of consciousness. You could interpret it in terms, I mean, I'm just, you could perhaps link it to, as you said, everything, we communicate basically through words. And if every single syllable sound word is emergent from Om, perhaps one should be able to understand all that is if one contemplates and understands Om in its entirety.
Yeah, thank you, Suresh. Very well, extremely well put. So before I give you some interesting snippets about scientific views of Om, just to get us all interested in this, can I request Harish ji to recite Om for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you, Harish. So let us just hold on to that the memory of the sound that Harish has so beautifully he's chanted Om, because yes, as Suresh mentioned, the word home it's almost like it's a memory stick. Everything it's like a USB stick, and everything seems to be included in this. So you could, in that sense, the whole of the universe is actually compressed in that one word Om, which we will see in detail in the coming weeks. But there is also a scientific angle to Om. There is also another angle that is quite popular these days, and not surprisingly, it's very popular, and it resonates with our Vedic rishis' view. Yeah. Now I have put a note on the left side. I've got a few things there. The sound of the Big Bang, the sound of the sun, Yeah, these two I thought was really interesting. For those of you who want to do some bedtime reading or bedtime listening to something, there is also a program in BBC called The Power of Om, and I've given you a link to that in BBC. It's quite an interesting 30 minutes discussion from a very Western perspective. Yeah, so we don't have to take all that is being discussed in that forum very seriously, but it's interesting. It gives you a flavor as to how the Western view on the power of Om is. Now, Harish so beautifully recited the Om, the Pranava mantra. Okay. Now, in the very first sutra of Badarayana, he said Om Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Yeah. So, in the Bhashyas and the commentaries of those words, we know that our Vedic scripture, Vedas declare that he gives a sequence as to how creation actually happened. Yeah. So the creation, according to the Vedas, is this Brahman said Om, and then he said Atataha as the next word. So he said Om Atataha, and the whole creation started. Okay. Now, I just want to play this music. This it's not a music; it's a sound. I've actually taken from the physics faculty of Washington University, where they do a lot of work on the Big Bang stuff and the background microwave radiation and the sound. So they had a file in their faculty that actually tells you about the sound of the Big Bang, and this is a reconstruction as to how that sound of the Big Bang would have been when the universe was created. Okay, and you let me know what it feels like, and I hope the audio works. Were you able to hear it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Maharaj.
So go to the website and have a listen. To me, it sounds like Om. And there are lots of other, articles, scientific articles that talk about the sound of the Big Bang and how it sounds very similar to the Om sound that we are all very familiar with from our Hindu Dharma. Okay. And not surprisingly, our Veda Vyasa has said the creation started with Om Atataha. Okay. So I sometimes wonder, it may be a coincidence, but increasingly the more one studies, the more convinced one gets from the inner visions of our rishis and how they had understood the creation of the universe. And that seems to resonate, at least to some extent, with what the modern view of this is. Now look at the sound of the sun, and I'll pay a little bit of a snippet on that. Let's not spend too much time on this. And again, I thought the sound of the sun is interesting and important because our Gayatri mantra is that Om Bhur Bhuvaswaha Tatsavituhu Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yonaha Prachodayat. It is talking about the Surya Narayana who is inside the sun, and that Gayatri mantra starts with Om. So when I was doing this research on sound of the sun, what is the sound of the sun from NASA's perspective? And go to NASA and look at this. Again, there is an interesting sound there. Let's play for 30 seconds and then we'll switch it off. Oops.
Sensitive enough, you'd actually could see this jiggle.
Sorry. Hang on. It's creating some IT problems.
You're actually hearing the vibration of the sun. It almost has a warmth to it. It's just enough where I can almost feel the sound on my skin or on my clothes. I imagine feeling the sun, moving next to me. My name is Alex Young, and I am
check that website out about this director, associate director of NASA, who is actually, does a research in this, and he captures the sound of the sun. And that is also like Omkara. And there is lots of discussions about how the sound of the sun is Omkara, and how the sound of the Big Bang, as we now know from science, seems to be Omkara. And if you do Google search, or if you do PubMed search, there are lots of articles that talks about the time frequency analysis of chanting the Om mantra. What are the functional MRI imaging studies of Om and what it does to the brain? So there are all these interesting aspects to Om, which I'm hoping, so one of us in the audience will actually pick it up in over the next 2 or 3 weeks and actually give us a summary of the scientific perspective of Om. But I'm going to focus only on the scriptural aspects of Om. Okay, so we got another 10 minutes, and I'll just move to the next slide. So I hope it was interesting that let's look at the various angles. What does it mean? What is the etymology? Why is it central? What is it? What is the science of Om? How does it link with modern science and understanding of the universe and so on? Everything seems to fall in place when one gets a deep understanding of Om. So now where to start? I mean, Suresh Kankanwadi ji said that there is so much about Om, we have to start somewhere, isn't it? So that is what Mandukya Upanishad actually saying. Guys, if you want to start to understand about Om, start like this. Om iti etad aksharam. Okay, that is what it's saying. Now, we have done 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember how many weeks we have spoken about Kshara, Akshara, and Kutasto Akshara. That fits in extremely well here. So we had Kshara Purushas are all the Chaturmukha Brahma, Kutasto Akshara is Lakshmi, whereas the Sukara is God or Brahma himself. And we have looked at the various etymologies of Akshara. Please go back to the previous slides to just think about this. We split Akshara into A plus Kshara, Aksha plus Ra, A plus Ksha plus Ra, and understood Akshune, Akshnute iti Aksharaha, Adhikam Ksharanti. There are so many ways in which you understand Akshara. So the Akshara in the primary sense here means the Supreme Brahman. Yeah, it means the Supreme God. It means Vishnu. It means Krishna. It means whatever you want to call it, but I would call this as Vishnu because I like that name. Yeah. So Akshara here is Vishnu himself. Yeah. So this Akshara is not just a syllable. Yeah, to say Om iti etad aksharam, this Om is a syllable, is fine, but that is not the deeper philosophy of the word aksharam. Aksharam, to understand aksharam, you should have done chapter 15, which we have just done. So that aksharam is Vishnu himself, and I have given you this very famous picture that we had so many weeks about God, Jiva, Prakriti, and Chetana Prakriti. Okay, so Om iti etad aksharam. So the first thing that, as my mom and Sheila ji said, Om means the supreme being. That is the conclusion. Look at all our Upanishads and scriptures. How do they start? They start Harihi Om. What does that mean? Hari is Om. That is how they start. Harihi Om. And then they start everything. So that is not surprising, because Mandukya has actually categorically said Om iti etad aksharam, and Krishna has declared that Akshara, the supreme Akshara, is me, who is also called Purushottama. Okay, so that is the first point that we need to understand when we start about Om, that we grasp the idea Om is a name of the Supreme. And as we have done this before, the name of the Supreme is actually his adjectives. They talk about his qualities. They are not his proper nouns. Nobody has given him a name. We just call that so that we can understand certain attributes of the Supreme. So Om gives us an idea of the various attributes of the Supreme. Okay, so what are those attributes? So this is only one slide that I'm going to talk today. Yeah, so Om equals Akshara equals Harihi equals Brahman equals Narayana equals Vishnu. So that is the overwhelming conclusion of Om. Now the word Om, as we have done before, you have to take the etymology of Om. So Om comes from two dhatus. Yeah, Avadhatu and Uyi dhatu. So there are two dhatus in Vedic Sanskrit. So Avadhatu means Avatiti iti Om, Avagatau iti Om. That means Gatau means everywhere. That means omniscient. Okay, look at the English word omniscient. Look at the English word omnipresent. Look at the English word omnipotent. What are the first two letters of those? It's Om. Yeah, people People don't catch that idea there. The very first two letters of these English words actually got Om. Why? Because Om means that. Avagatau iti Om. That is why it is omniscient. Avavyaptau iti Om. Omnipresent. Avasamartye iti Om. Omnipotent. Avagame iti Om. Omniscient. Avapraveshe iti Om. He is the indweller, antaryamin of everything. Avarakshe iti Om. He is the protector of everybody. Avavade iti Om. Sarva samharaka. He is the destroyer of everything. Yeah. So that immediately gives you those 7 different attributes of the Supreme, not 7, 6 different attributes of the Supreme. When you take the root avadatu, the ava as the dhatu there, to understand how did the word Om originate. So that will immediately give you these ideas about omniscience, omnipresent, and omnipotent, which is what Purusha Shukta, the first Varga, talks about, as you know. Yeah, so that akara. Yeah, it can also come from ui dhatu. Okay, there is a very famous verse in Brahmasutra Anuvyakyana called Otatvachihi Omkaro Vyaktyaso Tad Gunotatam. So Otatvachi, so that means Om comes from the root word ui, so that becomes Ota. So what does that mean? Means to network or attach to one another. That gives you an idea of all these infinite attributes are in the Supreme. Yeah, in whom all the infinite auspicious attributes are present. That is Om. Yeah. So now, if you look at the first sutra of Brahma Sutra, we have done Om Atato Brahma Jignasa. So there is this Brahma. You do then therefore investigation into Brahman shall begin. And we have seen so many times what is the meaning of Brahman. We said Atakasmad Uchyate Brahmeti Bruvantohi Asmin Gunaha. So Brahman means he who has infinite auspicious attributes, which is the same as Otatvachihi Omkaraha. Okay. So this Om then is also the same as Brahman, which is the same as Purusha, which is the same as Narayana, which is the same as Vishnu. Look at the etymology of Purusha. We looked before about that. We've done this before. There are about 9 different meanings of Purusha. One of this is Purna Shadgunatvat, that which has infinite auspicious attributes. Look at the etymology of Narayana. Ara means defects. Ayana means abode. Na means opposite of. So that means he has only positive attributes and no defects. Again, that is the same as Otatvachihi Omkaraha. Vishnu means, it's again we have discussed, it's not a proper noun, it is etymological. Vish means to pervade. Pervade means pervade in time, space, and gunas. So again, that is the same as Otatvachihi Omkaraha. So once we know the compound Akhanda word Om actually denotes the Vishnu, then the other name of Om called Pranava actually then becomes very legible for us. Why is Om also called Pranava? Okay, so Pranava again is pra plus nava. Pra means prakrishta. Prakrishta means sreshta. Nava means there are 3 meanings at least. One is new. He is always new in the sense that he is changeless. Yeah. 9. What do we do? 9 different forms of bhakti to him. Nava also means 9. Nava also means stuti. Stuti means stotra or something in praise. Okay. Something in praise of this Om, who is pranava. Na means balam. Yeah, means strength. Vam means jnana. Sreshta jnana and bala. Yeah. Who has got the highest levels of strength and highest levels of jnana and ananda, which is the Supreme Being himself. So when you understand the meaning of Om, then the pranava, as it is also called, then that becomes sensible, because he is the highest being, he's got high strength and he's in jnanananda. Yeah, and you do 9 forms of bhakti and you worship him. Okay, so that is one reason why we use Om as a Akhanda. Akhanda mantra means as one single word. Now, as Suresh ji mentioned, this Om actually expands into so many other concepts. Everything in the universe, every knowledge in the universe is actually compressed in Om. And that is the reason why it is also called Bijaksharam mantra. Yeah, Bija means seed. If you want to know the tree, you need to know the seed. Yeah, and the seed eventually grows into a tree, and that is how the example is taken. Om compresses all of the Vedic literature, and as it grows, it becomes the Veda, this huge tree called the Vedas. How does it grow? AUM, Bhu Bhuva Swaha, Pada 1, Pada 2, Pada 3, Varga 1, Varga 2, Varga 3, Padya Gana, Padya, Gadya, Gana, and all the sounds, and it becomes this big tree that talks about the Supreme. Okay. So hopefully, the very first word of Mandukya Upanishad is highly significant because it puts that word. So does the Chandogya Upanishad, so that our rishis are actually asking us, don't brush aside Om, just say Om and get on with life. No, try and focus on the Om in deep contemplation. And that is what we should be doing over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And hopefully at the end of it, we will all become munis. Because as Mandukya Upanishad has said, whoever understands the grand vision of Om is actually a muni. Okay, and what the Mandukya does is it expands and various layers of interpretation. Yeah, and even the symbol Om, which has got 3 curves here, and then there is a 4th curve with a dot, that itself has got meaning, and that meaning comes from Mandukya Upanishad. So we will see all that in the next few weeks. So that is something to be continued, and I hope this will be of interest. So I'll stop there, and we can take up any questions or discussions. I'm really happy I finished on time. Thank you. Krishna Pranamastu.
Madhu, this is Harish. I had one question from when you were talking about the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads. The question is there a broad universal acceptance that those 3 are, very tightly interconnected and aligned, or are there philosophies that only focus on one and do not give as much importance to one or the others?
Yeah, so interesting question, Harish. I think all the 3 strands of Vedanta, that is, you're talking about Advaita, Visishtadvaita, and Advaita, all 3 have taken the Prasthana Trayas as their foundation. That is their evidence base. So you can, you have to come with a hypothesis, right? And then you go and find evidence in your literature. So the references are all taken from these 3 works. So all the 3 strands of Vedanta, they take evidence from 3. Now, what is interesting is are all the 3 the same with regards to their importance, or there are slight differences? Yeah, which takes priority? Say, is Gita more important than Upanishad, or is Sutra more important than Gita, for example? So there are some differences. Say, for example, if you go to the Advaita school, yeah, for Advaita school, for example, Upanishad Prasthana, Gita Prasthana, Sutra Prasthana, in that order. Okay, but if you go to Dvaita school, it will be Sutra Prasthana, Gita Prasthana, and Upanishad Prasthana, in that order with regards to the evidence base and what is more important. If there is a clear evidence in the Sutra, that overrides any other evidence otherwise in Gita or Upanishad. So there are that kind of subtle differences within the 3 schools of Vedanta, and that is for individual studies and see what appeals to us, and then we follow that. But all 3 have taken this. So now the bigger question is, are there other schools of Hindu tradition that actually don't even take material from these 3? Yeah, are there? Yes, there are. Now, what is the significance and the pramanyatva? What is when I say pramanyatva, I mean, what is the credibility or the robustness of the view in which that is being discussed? The traditional view is, if something is not there within the Prasthana Trayas, then it would not actually be a sound evidence base to propound a particular philosophy. Okay, so all these 3, they have traditionally remained the key foundations of Vedanta. Okay, I'm talking about Vedanta, nothing about Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, or Uttara Mimamsa. We are only focusing on Vedanta because in Bharatvarsha, only that is available now. Much of the other things have gone. Yeah. Anything else?
No, Suresh here, Madhu, no questions. Thank you. This seems to be very interesting as we move forward.
Excellent. So what I would really be very grateful is if one of us will actually take up the scientific evidence base. Yeah. So send me a text or something as to who wants to do it, of actually reviewing all the scientific evidence of Om, and then present this in a 1 hour session about the current scientific view of Om. And there is a lot of material that's available out there. And some of you might have done that kind of analysis. I think it'll be interesting. So please do send me some messages.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Deval.
I thought that when you are chanting Om, the pause between the two Oms is also considered important part of Om, but you are not talking about that. Is there some reason for that?
Yeah, sure, they will. So I would suggest that we spend about 2 to 3 weeks doing all this, because all that I have told you today is Om as an Akhanda. Akhanda is as a word. What does it mean? But actually there are individual components of that particular sound. There is Akara, Ukara, Makara. Then there is Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada. Then there is Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, Bindu, Shanta, Atishanta. There are 8 components of Om. There are so many variations in that, and they all come out with various underlying philosophies. So we will discuss that, I'm sure. But you're right, there is that pause. Yeah, after the Nada, the Bindu, Kala, Shanta, Atishanta, and then it stops. Then you start another Om. So all those things are for, it'll be nice to get a proper, I'm not a great expert in that aspect of it, I have to admit. It'll be nice to get a yoga master, for example, to actually illustrate that for us, and how they do it from, from bottom of their stomach, and then raise it up and bring it down. And so we'll see if we can find somebody to do a session. Maybe Sudarshan knows somebody.
Thank you.
Madhu, you want somebody to present the science of Om, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll definitely find, and we can put it. That's not a problem.
Yeah. It was about chanting also, how to recite Om and how to bring it into meditation and stuff. So I look around if there is an expert in the area who can actually give us some insight into that.
Yeah, and we can also chant at the time, whoever it is.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Sounds good.
So when do you want this session on the Om? In 3 weeks' time?
The science, okay. You can do it maybe. The other bits I would take about 2 to 3 weeks to finish, and then at the end of it we can do a scientific session. So shall we say in week 3?
Week
so that
3
is end of week 3.
No, this is week 1 then. So
week 1, so week 4. Sorry, week 4.
Week 4, yeah. Okay, yeah, that will be done, boss.
Yeah, you are volunteering, Sudarshan?
Yes, yeah. Let me try. I mean, you said
Brilliant.
3 people. Am I the only one, or?
Yeah, I love your. Okay, fine. Yes.
No, I'm okay. I'm just saying, like,
We'll keep talking, sir. Yeah, we'll see if 2 or 3 people do it. That's even better. Yeah, we will do it so that everybody.
I'm okay with that anyway. So.
Yeah, that's good. Sudarshan, thanks. There is some messages in chant also. Primary syllabus, everything else follows from this AUM. Like 3 colors can from entire, so the syllabus can from everything else. Okay, that's good. Yeah. From Paresh, thank you. Yeah, and yes, Harish ji chanted very well. Yes, that's good. Anything else? Shall we call it a day then, Sudarshan?
Thanks, Madhu.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thanks, Madhu. Thank you.
Okay, we'll meet
Bye.
next week.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks,
Madhu.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.